All right, George, and now we have more on that massive NFL protest and a man who started it all, Colin Kaepernick, kneeling to protest social injustice and police brutality. The quarterback is now a free agent, and he's still unsigned. ABC's Chris Conley is in Los Angeles with more. Good morning, Chris.
Good morning, Michael. Very much at the center of things, Colin Kaepernick let the protests speak for him this weekend. His actions part of a resurgence in social activism by high-profile athletes who in the past have taken the lead in sparking discussion, especially in the area of race. For Colin Kaepernick, it began a year ago with the hope of sending a message, kneeling during the national anthem to protest racial injustice. This weekend, he saw his message and his means of conveying it command the attention of the nation and his president.
Wouldn't you love to see one of these NFL owners, when somebody disrespects our flag, to say, get that son of a off the field right now?
Yet unsigned by any NFL team, Colin Kaepernick himself could be found not on the field where he said he wants to be, telling a columnist last week, "I'm ready right now, working out daily," where other players have said he deserves to be.
Do I think Kaepernick is better than some of these starting quarterbacks in this league? Absolutely. Should he be on a roster, in my opinion? Absolutely.
Instead, he could be found here in cyberspace, retweeting a host of images of players and others who support him, including military widows, as if in response to negative reaction he said last year that he anticipated.
You're going to have that backlash for trying to fight for people.
He also retweeted his mother's response to the president. Guess that makes me a proud... Kaepernick, now a part of a sports activism tradition stretching back decades. At the 1968 Summer Olympics, U.S. medalists Tommy Smith and John Carlos on the podium.
This is a tradition in the African-American community. This is a tradition across the country. We've always had athletes to use their platforms to speak out around issues of social justice.
Also in the 60s, Muhammad Ali, a voice for black empowerment and dissent.
You won't even stand up for me in America for my religious beliefs, and you want me to go somewhere and fight, but you won't even stand up for me here at home.
Billie Jean King would become a leader of the women's movement. In 2016, the WNBA's Minnesota Lynx donning Black Lives Matter shirts. And in an unprecedented role for the best player in an American team sport, LeBron James embracing social activism in public statements, on social media, even on the court itself.
It's time to look in the mirror and ask ourselves, what are we doing to create change?
Also this weekend, the ACLU tweeting out a line from the memoir of Jackie Robinson, perhaps our nation's most revered athlete for breaking baseball's color line. Writing in 1972, "I cannot stand and sing the anthem." Robin?
Many forget that he said that. All right, wrote about that. Thank you, Chris. We're going to bring in the man who first convinced Colin Kaepernick to kneel instead of sitting during the national anthem. Former Seattle Seahawks player and Green Beret, Nate Boyer. Nate, thank you very much. We've been looking forward to hearing from you so you can explain to people how in the beginning Cap was sitting, he had a discussion, reached out to you, had a discussion, and you convinced him that kneeling was the way to go. Please explain how that all came down.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't say I convinced him so much as we kind of came to that place together. You know, we sat down in the lobby of the team hotel right before on game day, before their last preseason game last season against the Chargers. And we were down in San Diego, and we just talked about our own perspectives of, you know, how things were going with, with our country, you know, and my feeling towards the anthem and the flag are very different from his, just because of our experiences and our backgrounds and what we've been through and what we've experienced. So, you know, we were trying to be sensitive to each other and listen first, you know, and just sort of understand where the other person's coming from. And we kind of came to a middle ground through those discussions, through that conversation. And, you know, I believe that's something that needs to happen a little bit more nowadays in our country in general. There's a hell of a lot of shouting and hate and not a lot of listening and, you know, reasonable talk.
A good example of you two coming from opposing sides, so to speak, but finding some compromise there and having a dialogue and a productive discussion. I know that you don't agree with kneeling. You stand, former Green Beret. What did you make of what we saw yesterday in the NFL and other places as well?
I mean, it was very interesting. it hurts every time I see that. It hurts. It hurt really bad yesterday, probably more than anything. I thought, what was interesting is it seemed like what Alejandro Villanueva was doing in Pittsburgh, who's, he was an Army Ranger with 3 combat deployments. The rest of the team stayed in the locker room, and he came out on the field and put his hand on his heart and stood for the anthem. It was almost like he was protesting, and he was standing for the anthem, which was really interesting to see, And I'm just afraid that a lot of it yesterday was more, we're protesting Donald Trump's statements. And I think, the anthem itself and that flag, it doesn't represent the president. It represents 350 million Americans. It's the American flag and our national anthem. And so it almost felt like in some ways, if you were standing at attention and facing the flag, it's like you're agreeing with those statements that President Trump made. And I don't like that. I don't like that is what it felt like yesterday. That really does concern me.
And that's what some people are struggling with. Really quick, Kaepernick we haven't heard from him. He's retweeted some. Have you spoken to him at all recently?
No, not recently. I spoke to him, earlier this year, and it's a tough position for him. It's a tough position for some of these, honestly, for some of the league owners. I know that people may disagree with that, but if you look at a lot of them yesterday, they were down on the field embracing their team, standing alongside, locking arms with their players. And I look at it much more of like, I believe, I don't think he's necessarily blackballed. I think the situation is, everything comes down to money. It's a business. And if you could hire the most qualified employee at your, if you're a business owner, but you knew or you feared you may lose a large amount of your clientele, even if this person was more qualified than anybody, would you hire that person? And I think that's more where that fear is coming from. But I don't know. Things through this last week, there may be more of a shift and an opportunity of, bringing him on board. We'll see what happens.
We'll see what happens. Nate, thank you very much for your perspective. Really, truly appreciate it. Thank you, Nate.
Boy, Michael, you listen to that thoughtful conversation right there, and you think this is really uncharted territory for Colin Kaepernick and the whole NFL.
Yeah, it really is. But I think if there's ever a chance for Colin Kaepernick to make it back into the NFL, it's now. When you see the owner standing up with the players, I think there if anything, maybe a door has been opened, because when it comes to race, religion, economic backgrounds, the locker room is the one place where none of that really matters. We all don't agree. We all don't like each other. But you know what? You find a common ground to do what you're there to do, and that is to win as a team and do what your job is. And I think right now the door is open for Colin Kaepernick because talent-wise, he has it. It's just the other things that I think are little what Nate, scares everybody away.
What Nate referred to, and no way he could have foreseen what has happened. And the protests have also spread to the WNBA, the Los Angeles Sparks. Well, the entire team stayed in the locker room during the national anthem before Game 1 of the WNBA Finals yesterday. In a statement, the players said they wanted to stand in solidarity with NFL players and stand by their mission of unity and togetherness. The opposing team, the Minnesota Lynx, they stayed on the court, linked arms during the anthem. Oh, and by the way, it was a great game. Decided on a last-second shot, won by the Sparks, and you can watch Game 2 of the WNBA Finals 8 p.m.
And we were talking earlier about whether the president was going to double down on this, or we say triple down on this. As we were just talking right now, 15 seconds ago, he's tweeting again. He's saying many people booed the players who kneeled yesterday, which is a small percentage of the total. These are fans who demand respect for our flag. He said again, it has nothing to do with race. It's about respect for our country, flag, and national anthem. This debate not going away.
But once again, as I said before, presidents in the past, you try and douse the flame.
Yeah.
You don't want to throw gasoline on it. We'll continue to double down and triple down.
Feeling it.
Tweets keep on coming. We're going to be back with some new technology parents can put in their kids' cars.